Hey there. Thanks for being here tonight. I've got a truly bizarre and completely real story to share with you. It all started last 4th of July when I went to a big music event with a few close friends. My best friend Jimmy is pretty big in the East Coast electronic music scene. He and his crew often throw huge parties at top clubs in New York and New Jersey, booking big name DJs. I've never been deep in that world, but because we've been friends forever, I usually get invited to go for free, with VIP access, free drinks, and even a chance to mingle with the artists. Last year for Independence Day, Jimmy organized a massive event at the Jersey Shore. He invited me and a mutual friend, Ryan, to come early and help him prep. The three of us drove down about 4 hours before doors opened. While Jimmy got busy setting things up, Ryan and I had nothing to do, so we started drinking. A lot. It was a party after all, music blaring, drinks flowing, and everything was just getting started. I had no idea that night would become one of the most disturbing memories of my life. By the time the party actually started, Ryan and I were already pretty wasted. Things were blurring together, but we thought we still had things under control. The bass was thumping, lights flashing, people dancing. It all felt limitless. We were just living in the moment. As the night wore on, the energy shifted. People were either finding their way home or finding someone to go home with. Jimmy had already secured an Airbnb nearby for me and Ryan, so at least getting home wasn't a concern. Then we noticed two women at the bar, one in a red dress, curly brown hair, sharp eyes. The other was tall, thin, long black hair, and carried herself with a kind of elegant confidence that drew stares. We went over, struck up a conversation, and surprisingly, they responded warmly. If I remember right, they said their names were Gianna and Marcella. Things escalated quickly. After some flirting and laughter, Marcella suggested we continue the party somewhere else. We didn't hesitate. Who says no to that kind of invite? Before we left, Gianna handed Ryan and me each a cocktail, just to get on our level, she laughed. I knew that was odd. Usually it's the guys offering drinks, not the other way around. But these girls didn't seem ordinary. The way they dressed, spoke, moved. Ryan and I didn't question a thing. What I didn't realize was that the drink was the first step into a night we would completely lose control of. We left the party and walked along the beach under the distant glow of lights. The breeze was gentle, the sand soft beneath our feet, waves crashing steadily, a strangely romantic setting. Marcella said her house wasn't far, right on the beach, and insisted it was much better than whatever cheap Airbnb we had. Ryan and I exchanged a glance and shrugged, no reason to say no. On the way, we talked a lot. Both Gianna and Marcella were smart, charming. They talked about art, architecture, even the history of electronic music, stuff people usually don't bring up at beach parties. I was starting to feel out of it, slurring my words, slowing down, like I was falling behind in the conversation. Then, something hit me. Not like any drunken feeling I'd had before. It was like my body was melting, not from heat or emotion, but like my joints were detaching, muscles turning to jelly. My legs went weak, like cardboard. I had to fight to stay on my feet. My mouth, eyes, hands, everything felt distant, unresponsive. It was like I was separating from my body. My fingers and toes started to go numb, like I couldn't feel them anymore. But then, the feeling disappeared, just vanished into thin air, as if it had never happened. I actually wondered if I had imagined the whole thing. And then we arrived. The beach house stood in front of us, and I have to say, it exceeded every expectation, full-on mansion. I felt like we'd stepped into a different world, but I didn't know this was the beginning of the worst part. Marcella's house was exactly what she said, and even more. We had to leave our shoes outside, and as the door shut behind us, I felt like I'd crossed into another realm. The living room, if you could call it massive, minimalist, but strangely luxurious. Sculptures on pedestals, soft light spilling over huge abstract paintings along one wall. Everything felt like a museum, yet cold, unnerving. It screamed wealth, not flashy, but quiet, powerful, and suspicious. I looked for Ryan and realized he and Marcella had disappeared somewhere. That left me with Gianna. She stepped closer, smiled gently, and leaned in to kiss me. And that's the last thing I remember. I don't remember the kiss. I don't remember speaking. I don't remember drinking more. Everything just went black. I didn't pass out. I disappeared from my own memory. What terrified me later was that my phone showed messages sent during the blackout. I was awake, using my phone, texting people like nothing was wrong. But I remember none of it. Nothing. At first, I thought maybe I was just really drunk. But I've been blackout drunk before, and never like this, never completely memoryless. What made it worse was that Ryan experienced the exact same thing. Same time, same house, same symptoms. That's when the real fear started to crawl in. The next thing I remembered was sunlight burning into my face. I opened my eyes and found myself lying in a patch of dry bushes off the side of a road. Not the beach, not Marcella's house, not the Airbnb. I had no idea where I was, but I knew it was nowhere near where we started. I sat up slowly, head pounding, throat dry, body aching. I looked down and froze. I was wearing someone else's clothes. Not mine, not Ryan's. A huge wrinkled t-shirt and sweatpants, no personal items in the pockets. No wallet, no phone, no keys. Just my shoes, but the laces were removed and soaked. I sniffed. No salt water, no chlorine, just a damp, musty smell I couldn't identify. I didn't remember where I'd been, what I'd done, or how I got there. Just emptiness. I stayed still for a long time, trying to piece something together, but there was nothing. Like I'd been wiped clean for 10 straight hours. I stood, looked around, no landmarks, just a curving road through the woods. But across the street, a few hundred feet away, I saw a red glowing sign, 7-Eleven. I walked in, trying to act normal, and asked the cashier to borrow a phone. He stared at me for a second, probably deciding if I was homeless or dangerous. Then he slid the phone over silently. The only number I remembered was my sister's. I called. She answered, and all I could say was, "Something's wrong. Give me Ryan's number, please." I called Ryan over and over. No answer. And then the worst thought hit me. If this happened to him too, we were part of something much darker. I stood there, heart pounding, when the store door opened behind me. I turned and froze. It was Ryan. He walked in, looking just as bad as I did. Bloodshot eyes, messy hair, wearing someone else's dusty, sandy clothes. We stared at each other for a few seconds, speechless. Then we both let out this half laugh, half panic, half relief. We bumped fists, just to confirm we were both still alive. Then we pulled each other aside and started comparing what had happened. His story was identical. He woke up in a random place in someone else's clothes, with no memory, no phone, no wallet. He remembered the exact same number, the same blackout. We knew without a doubt, this wasn't just alcohol. No way two people had the exact same memory loss, got stripped of their belongings, dumped miles away from the beach, just from drinking. That's when I decided we had to call the police. We left the 7-Eleven, thanked the cashier profusely, and called it in. A squad showed up pretty fast. At first, they seemed serious, listening to every detail, taking notes carefully. But then, I started to feel them doubt us. They didn't say it outright, but the tone shifted. "You sure you weren't just drunk? No witnesses to confirm these girls exist? You don't remember the address of that house?" I started to feel like some guy making up stories, rather than a victim. I repeated that I'd never lost memory like this before, that I had messages sent while I didn't remember anything. They nodded, jotted notes, then turned to Ryan, asked him the same stuff. I gave them my sister's number. She confirmed I had called her in a panic right after waking up. I thought that would help, but one officer gave me this half-skeptical look and said, "We'll file a report, but unless you have solid proof, there's not much we can do." And that was it. No one found Marcella or Gianna. No cameras near the beach path to the house. Jimmy, who'd left before it all happened, didn't know anything. That house? We couldn't recall the address, had no photos, and when we went back searching, we only found rows of identical closed-up mansions. I'll never know exactly what happened that night, but I do know this: something was done to me. I've never blacked out like that. I didn't change clothes and throw myself in a bush miles away, and I wasn't alone. Ryan wasn't either. It left a quiet kind of fear in me, knowing there are people and forces out there, doing things you'll never understand. And when they come for you, no one can help. No one believes you. And worse, you might never remember what happened at all. The car that followed me on the endless road. My friend, I want to tell you a story that might sound ordinary, but still sends chills down my spine every time I remember it. It started on a summer night, the 4th of July. My name is Ariel. I live in Georgia, near the Alabama border. A few years ago, I was invited to a backyard barbecue in a small town in Alabama, hosted by Isabel, an old college friend of mine. You know the type: classic American cookout. Paper plates, burgers, sparkling fireworks, kids running around laughing. That atmosphere, it was unforgettable. I remember laughing a lot that evening, probably for the first time after a long stretch of gloom. I left the party a little after 10 p.m., thinking I'd take a relaxed 2-hour drive home. What I didn't know was that the moment I stepped into my car and turned the key, I was stepping into a nightmare. Because you know something? Out in the rural countryside, after the fireworks fade and the laughter dies down, all that's left is darkness. And sometimes the scariest thing is what you can't see behind you. Have you ever driven alone at night with only your headlights cutting through the black? At first, I was fine, music playing low, still smiling from the party. But the deeper I drove into those dark country roads, the more unease crept in. About 30 minutes in, I noticed a car behind me, a gray Nissan Altima, mud caked along the bottom. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured just someone heading the same way. But then, something strange happened. I sped up. The car sped up. I slowed down. It slowed down too. The distance between us never changed. Always 6 or 7 car lengths. Not closer, not farther. I nudged slightly to the right as if offering them to pass. But no, they didn't pass. They stayed right behind me like a shadow. That's when a chill ran down my spine. I'm being followed. I couldn't be sure, but my instinct screamed this wasn't a coincidence. I decided to test it. Up ahead, there was a small turn, leading into a sparsely populated residential area that no outsider would casually turn into. I turned left without hesitation. And less than 10 seconds later, the car turned too. That's when I knew for sure. I wasn't just driving at night anymore. I was being hunted. I'm not someone who panics easily. But the moment I saw that car mirror my turn, something inside me snapped, like I was no longer the driver, but the prey. My heart raced so hard it choked my breath. I had no idea who they were, man or woman, one person or more. I didn't know what they wanted. All I knew was that they were following me and cornering me between the darkness, the trees, and a road with no end. I tried to stay calm, even though my hands were soaked in sweat, clutching the steering wheel. I had only one mission: find people, lights, safety. And then, like a cruel joke from fate, the low fuel light came on. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. My old Corolla could sometimes run 20 miles after the light turned on, sometimes just 10. And out here, no gas stations, no houses, just trees and night. I pulled up Google Maps, my fingers trembling. Nearest gas station 8 miles. I wasn't sure I could make it, but I had no choice. I didn't dare stop, didn't dare turn around. I thought about calling the police, but felt ridiculous. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, police might not get to me in time. So I kept driving, praying the car behind me would just stop. But it didn't. It stayed right behind me. Not speeding, not slowing. Just there, like death itself, pacing me. I started imagining every worst-case scenario. My car dies. They get out. I can't run. No one will come. No one will know what happened. I've never felt so helpless and small. And then I saw light. In the distance, the faint glow of a gas station through the trees, like a whisper of hope. As the lights of the station peeked through the branches, I nearly cried with relief. Without thinking, I swerved hard, tearing into the parking lot like my life depended on it. I slammed the handbrake, flung the door open, and ran straight into the store, forgetting to even shut the car door. From behind the glass, I looked back, and there it was, the Nissan Altima. It had stopped at the edge of the lot, engine still running. No one got out, no one moved. They just sat there, watching. I stood frozen by the counter, heart pounding like it was going to burst. Every second felt like an hour, and then, like a switch had been flipped, the car suddenly turned around, hit the gas, and disappeared into the night, the same way it came. I gasped for air, not sure whether to feel relieved or more terrified. What just happened? All I knew was, if I hadn't pulled into that gas station, things could have gone very differently. The clerk, a guy in his 30s, asked what was going on. I gave him a quick version of the story, and he immediately offered to call the police. I nodded. Even after speaking to the cops, I couldn't shake the fear. I know, maybe to someone else, this wasn't that horrifying. But being stalked in the night on a lonely country road with no family nearby, no homes in sight, it carved a scar in me that won't fade. I got home that night and swore I'd never drive those country roads alone at night again. But it didn't end there. A few weeks later, I was half watching the evening news, just for background noise, when a report came on that made my blood freeze. 2 men wanted for armed robbery, attempted murder, and other charges in Alabama. Security footage showed a blurry image of a gray Nissan Altima, believed to have fled east. I sat frozen. It was the same car. I felt it in my bones. The moment that Nissan appeared on screen, my heart stopped. There was no doubt that was the car that followed me. Every detail matched. The color, the time, the area, the direction. I remembered the mud under the frame. I remembered how the headlights reflected off the gray paint. I remembered the dead silence as it idled in the parking lot, no one stepping out. I immediately called the police and told them everything. They took the information and said they'd pass it to the task force. I don't know if my story helped, but as I hung up the phone, I felt this wave of guilt crash over me. I had the chance to stop something, and I didn't. I didn't call the police right after I escaped. I let fear clamp my mouth shut. I told myself maybe I imagined it, maybe it wasn't that serious. But no, there were dangerous people out there, and maybe innocent people paid the price for my hesitation. I can't forgive myself for that. Not because I'm scared, but because I now understand. One choice, one phone call could have changed everything. Since that night, I never drive alone in the dark on country roads. I never ignore that feeling in my gut. And I'm telling you this story not to scare you, but to keep you aware. Because danger doesn't always knock on the front door. Sometimes, it just follows you silently in the rearview mirror, waiting for you to drop your guard, waiting for you to be alone. And if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, remember this. Trusting your instincts might just save your life and someone else's. I never imagined the 4th of July night would become a nightmare I carried for years after. And the scariest part is that I survived, but I can't stop thinking about what almost happened. I don't know exactly why that Nissan Altima left at the last second. Maybe they saw someone inside the gas station. Maybe they didn't want to act where cameras could catch them. Or maybe I was just a test and I barely passed. That thought eats me alive every night. Because if I hadn't seen that gas station sign in time, if I had run out of gas just minutes earlier, if I had stopped on the road and been caught, then maybe I wouldn't be here to tell this story. What haunts me most is this. I didn't call the police when I still had the chance. I let fear and doubt convince me it was nothing. But the truth is, there are real threats out there, and sometimes they're very close. That news story about the 2 men wanted for armed robbery and attempted murder, and then that car, the color, the make, the timeline, everything lined up in the worst way. Deep down, I know it was them. Even without proof, even without confirmation, I know. And that's what makes me feel like the worst kind of person, because I didn't do the right thing when I had the chance. I'll always live with the question, did someone else get hurt because I stayed silent? My friend, if you've listened this far, I hope you remember one thing. Not all danger is loud. Some threats are silent, patient, and only show up in the rearview mirror. Next time you feel you're being followed, next time your gut says something's off, don't brush it off. Don't be polite. Don't hesitate. Call someone. Pull into a well-lit area. Find safety, and if needed, call the police immediately. One call could save your life, could save someone else's. Share your story if you've ever experienced something like this. And if you found this video helpful, please share it, because maybe someone out there needs to hear this before it's too late.